Hello everybody, today we continue our little look around this rather temporary but nonetheless incredibly special exhibit set up exclusively for us here at Audi UK's super duper ultra secret storage facility. Now in the last video we looked at a replica of the Audi A4 UK car, a touring car, in fact Audi's first go really at the British touring car scene. Now that car really was never a winning formula, which is very common with first attempts. However, Audi, by the time this car came out, got things a little bit more right. This car was constructed in 1995, and in 1996, the A4 Super Touring entered no fewer than 7 championships around the world, and won all of them, including the 1996 British Touring Car Championship driven by Mr. Bieler. And this, or at least a car extremely like this, won that championship. This, unlike the Akai, is the real deal. There's a couple of parts in it that mean it doesn't actually run currently, but it is just a couple of parts shy of being a real, honest-to-goodness, fire-breathing super tourer. Now, super touring was an incredibly special era of racing. In my mind, it is up there with the golden age of Formula One and also Group B rally. Now, for those who don't know, super touring replaced the old Group A formula, a formula which produced cars like the Escort Cosworth RS 500. Now, the original idea of super touring, as is often the case with new regs, was to save a bit of money. The main difference between the cars, which didn't themselves change dramatically, was the fact that the need for homologation went out the window. So you no longer had to build 2,500 or 25,000 examples of a particular car in order to take it racing. All you had to do was to take something that looks a bit like your road car, and you could do more or less what you wanted to it within reason. It started off fairly sensibly, and everyone sort of, took it in the spirit it was intended and saved quite a bit of money. However, by the end of the era, in 2000, Ford UK allegedly spent £10 million fielding a team of 3 cars to make sure that they won the championship. However, right in the middle of the 90s, you had this thing. And this comes in an era when things on the touring car front were getting very technological, because this was a real quattro race car. They later outlawed it, but this thing did compete with all 4 wheels delivering power. Now, this thing is very, very special. Not just because it is, well, the real deal, and it is actually just, I kind of feel like that in here, sort of being able to be so close to such special machinery, but that thing over there, okay, that's a very pretty car. This is an obscene piece of engineering, and I think we really need to get straight to the meat and potatoes of the matter. And so Darren, you're going to come at the front because he loves this bit as much as I do. You see, it does look all very much like a sort of, well, an A4 with bits on, doesn't it? And then the more you look at it, the more you realise it is actually something rather special. The first giveaway is you've got this very typical super touring arch fitment. I can just about get a finger around the top of the wheel there, and this car is probably not in its racing ride height. You've got these ultra lightweight OZ racing wheels. You've got this carbon splitter at the front with the bits of aero appearing, widened arches of course to accommodate the wheels. Pretty chunky but still steel brakes. However, the magic is under here. To get in, as with any race car, pull the pin, and then, if I've got this right, check this out. This is pure and simple engineering pornography. No 2 ways about it. I mean, you start from the front. Darren's getting ahead of himself. So check this out. You've got this carbon fiber kind of slam panel here with the A4 logo evidently directing all of the air. I mean, look at that. It's pulling in air. I mean, unfortunately today we cannot hear this running, but I do believe their plan is to get it back in action, and I hope, if the guys are going to be nice to us, when it does run, we'll be made aware. Big old carbon fiber airbox feeding straight down into this engine. More carbon. I mean, they're just being obscene, but possibly even sexier than the carbon is look at this manifold. look at this. This is sort of real, genuine Formula One grade stuff. Now, the way that these cars were run is that they were designed and built by Audi Sport in Germany. And they were then fielded by the regional divisions of Audi like they were a privateer team, essentially. So this was fielded by Audi Sport UK, but built by the Audi team. And there's one very, very significant thing about that, you see. Audis don't break very often. And this car is very unusual for a racing car. This, in its entire touring car season, never broke. All of the parts in this car are specifically lifed. They know exactly how long every single thing is going to last. And so when each individual part reaches its life cycle, it is changed. Regardless of the condition it is in, it is changed. There's a really rigorous maintenance schedule, and that basically is why they lasted so well. And in touring cars in particular, we've got a lot of races. Making sure that each car gets to the end of each race is really critical if you want to be a winner. This is probably one of my favorite views of this car. I mean, this is just gorgeous. First off, you can see the big old slick wheel straight through here. It also gives you a view of the suspension setup, which is completely different to the regular B5 A4 road car. You see, that car had McPherson struts up the front and a multi-link setup at the back. This thing is double wishbone front and rear. This is a proper serious race car. Now, you may notice the fact that this engine is actually still very far forwards. Many of the Super Touring era cars realised that they could push their engines right far back, and in fact many of them were pretty much touching the firewall. Audi never did that. The engine stayed here, and so that did compromise them a little bit in the handling department, but the all-wheel drive then gave them a bit of an advantage in other areas, so it kind of worked out for them in the end. Unfortunately, Audi were quite heavily penalised for the all-wheel drive system in these cars, which meant that in some years they weren't quite as competitive as they probably should have been, because they were basically being unfairly battered for having the extra driven wheels. But in 1996, this car was truly dominant. However, it's not just the front, which is amazing to look at. The middle and even the back have got some pretty sexy things too, so let's show you those. One thing I noticed with this car is that the windscreen is actually held in with these few clips. The reason for that is that it's not bonded in the same sort of permanent way that it is on a road car, because, well, it's a race car, so they expect they're probably going to have to replace this, and when they do replace it, they want to do so in a hurry. And so yeah, these keep it in, because when you take this off, it'll come out pretty easy. And that's one of those little things that I just never appreciated until I got this close to it. Now, this is a fairly cramped cockpit. I would love to sort of try and get in here, but I just don't think it's going to happen. My hips are a little bit wider than the jockey that evidently drove this to victory. Now, you can see in here, this is quite a different beastie to the 80. That car, in comparison, is actually pretty primitive. This thing is fairly far advanced. You've got removable steering wheel, you've got all of your important controls down there. You've got a sequential gearbox in here. My favourite bit, you've got the bog standard A4 indicator stalks on the car, which is kind of cool. You've got obviously Recaro seat, and if Darren the cameraman pulls back, you'll see on the side this Audi Sport side impact security concept. Humorously, you also have electric windows. Probably made life a bit easier, a bit nicer, and you've got a very NASCAR looking style window net as well. In here is like some sort of OCD heaven. This is all immaculately lined and set up, and okay, in some ways you could look at it as sort of slightly dull and boring, but I thought, you guys are here with me, you want to see this. Oh, by the way, also, this is, as pointed out by my cameraman Darren, this is the only acceptable use of the pointy-uppy exhaust tip, in my opinion. That's only time I'm allowing that. That is fine. You can also see, if you stay down this height, Darren, the stamped Audi logo carbon fiber sort of firewall at the back there, which is pretty awesome. Also, some control panels, boxes and things in here, and this is all pretty sexy. This is all carbon here as well. See where the spare wheel well used to go, and presumably is now where the fuel cell is. It's a pretty awesome piece of engineering from an amazing period of racing in history. But I suspect at some point you've probably spotted that we have a couple of other race cars to look at, and so in the next two installments we're going to be looking at those. So thank you all for joining me once again. Thank you once more to Audi for letting us down here. We'll see you all for the next one.